Hey, I'm Nick.
And I'm Allie.
And this is But Have You Tried from the David A. Howe Public Library.
And today we have all the episodes are very special.
I know.
Every time I'm like, this is so special.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, they're all.
They are
equally
special. I like that baked into the premise, we have excitement because I am truly excited to know how you feel about Indiana Jones because, it's like you were just like raised under a little glass jar where you weren't exposed to Indiana Jones at all.
It's like the world around me is turning
outside of
Indiana Jones.
VeggieTales, Minnesota
Cucumber.
Yeah, which we do have to talk about because I watched it. There was something very disturbing that happened in Minnesota Cucumber. But let's dive right in. Allie's assignment this week was to watch the Indiana Jones franchise because we were recording on June 30th, 2023, which was the opening day for Dial of Destiny. So we're going to talk about the first 4 films, and in our next bookshelf, we're going to cover Dial of Destiny as well. So we're going to talk about the classic 4. Are we allowed to count Crystal Skull as a classic 4? We'll see what Allie says about it.
I feel like it's like the bonus 4. Almost.
The bonus 4.
You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. So hit me with some facts about the
Okay.
Indiana Jones franchise.
So the series was created by George Lucas and
Yes.
directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Which I have to say, anytime I see that, I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what happened? That like one person was like, I'm creating this, but I'm definitely not directing it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that was true of George Lucas in the original Star Wars movies, too. I mean, I think he only directed the first, and then, of course, he directed all the prequels.
Right.
So make whatever judgments you want about that. But
Thinking emoji.
yeah, I think it was because George Lucas isn't even the credited script writer on the original movies. So he gets the story by credit on the first 4 movies, not Dial of Destiny, but the first 4.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think it was like his brainchild. Then he was kind of like, "Oh, Steven, why don't you go ahead and
do something?
Turn these into films?"
All right. So the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, was released in 1981.
Before my lifetime, Allie.
Also before my lifetime.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I know you didn't see that coming. The fact that I hadn't been
What a
born in
surprise.
1981.
Yeah.
Right, it's a shock. And then Temple of Doom in 1984.
Which is a prequel.
Yes, which is a prequel.
Yes.
But there was nothing to indicate to me that it was a prequel as I was watching it.
Yes,
I
think it shows the dates on the screen, and I think that's it. I think they didn't want him to have to be fighting Nazis again, and they didn't want him to have to have broken up with Marianne or something. I think that's pretty much the only reason.
But the third one, he and Marianne seemingly are not.
I don't think they're together at that point.
And there's
no.
just
There's no
comment. Okay. And the third one, which is The Last Crusade, came out in 1989.
Yes.
Which after a long break, then The Crystal Skull came out in 2008.
Yeah, which is funny because I remember in 2008 everybody being like, he's pretty old.
That's really funny.
I don't know.
And here we are in the year of our Lord 2023.
15 full years later being
goodness.
like, I don't know.
Well, it's
pretty
kind
old.
of funny because I feel like in the Crystal Skull, and I guess this is getting a little bit into the discussion, maybe too much, but I feel like they really do kind of emphasize that, like, oh, haha, you're an old man now, and I'm like, haha, just you wait.
Yes, yeah, you're gonna wish for these days.
Oh man, it's so exciting.
Yes.
All right, so there was also a number of other things created based on Indiana Jones.
True.
A 1992 television series called The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Not good.
One of my friends watched this and she said she enjoyed it.
Really?
But it could have been like she watched it a long time ago and didn't think about critically evaluating it.
Here's the thing. I feel like had you watched the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles independently of watching the Indiana Jones movies, like based on the kind of things you like the BBC kind of like mysteries and stuff you like, I think you probably would have gotten into Young Indiana Jones as a teenager or even now maybe because it really has that vibe. It feels like a BBC production of some we've got to go to Cairo and solve a mystery, Dr. Jones. That's what it feels like.
Oh, incredible.
It's almost too educational at times. And
interesting.
I watched a couple because with this rewatch, I got my son to watch it with me, and we watched a couple of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and I feel the way I always felt about it, where I'm just like, did you watch the films before making this? Because it doesn't
really funny.
feel like it at all.
I'm kind of curious about those now.
Yeah, they're all on Disney Plus. You could go check them out.
Maybe I will.
There's some where he's like 10, and there's some where he's like a teenager, and I think the teenager ones are supposed to be a little bit better. And they were released in a few different ways. There was more like episodic versions, and then they recut them into TV movie length.
Oh.
And the episodic ones had like a frame story with a 90-year-old Indiana Jones. Can you imagine Indiana Jones pushing 90? But one of those, one called Mystery of the Blues, Harrison Ford came back and did like an old Indiana Jones character.
So did they like make him up to be an old Indiana Jones, or did they just pretend that he was old?
Well, it was a different actor who played the 90-year-old Indiana Jones and the other ones. But Harrison Ford did just the one while he was making The Fugitive. So he has a beard. And
that's funny.
Yeah, so I watched that one, and it was kind of cool to see him like do Indiana Jones in the 90s. But I don't know. It's a weird vibe. It doesn't really work for Indiana Jones fans. I feel like it just doesn't feel like Indiana Jones to me. But
that's really funny.
Yeah, but
I am curious about that now.
It's fully available. Go find it. Yeah,
maybe I'll try and watch one before we do our bookshelf episode.
I think you should.
Okay. All right, so there was also a Marvel Comics series that began releasing in 1983.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting because that was before Temple of Doom came out. So they were just like making up Indiana Jones stuff with like only one movie to go on.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And I'm like, good for them. Like, I love that initiative of just being like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. I'm
sure that, the Star Wars, Marvel had the rights to Star Wars. And at the time, Lucasfilm was just its own thing. And so I'm sure they just had deals in place for Marvel to make Lucasfilm properties into comic books, and they were just like, let it ride, So I'm sure that's how it happened, because the Star Wars comics for Marvel were like a big business.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right. So there were also various novelizations, as one usually kind of expects with this sort of thing.
Novelizations and original novels. There were quite a few. Yeah.
I saw that there was like original stories in German by Wolfgang Holbein.
Yeah.
And that kind of piqued my interest, like the idea that like these movies are in English, and like this German guy was like, let's make more of this, but in German. I don't know.
Particularly since the Germans don't look great in Indiana Jones movies. So.
I hadn't even thought about that part, but that's a really good point, actually.
I've read quite a few of the, Rob McGregor wrote quite a few of them, and I remember liking one called Indiana Jones and the Dance of the Giants, and one called Indiana Jones and the Genesis Deluge. Those were pretty cool. They're just more Indiana Jones adventures, just good times.
I feel like Indiana Jones could work really well as a book.
Oh, yeah.
Like an action-adventure kind of book.
They're a lot of fun. There's a ton of them. I haven't read them all, but I've read, 5 or 6 of them over the years.
So, apparently, how the series came to be is that George Lucas wrote this story, The Adventures of Indiana Smith.
Ugh.
I know. That was my reaction, too. I was like, what the heck? And so it was Steven Spielberg who changed his last name to Jones.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was like, no, Smith is not going to work. And I have to agree.
I mean, yes, I agree, too. But, like, in a vacuum, like, Smith and Jones are just kind of like...
Right.
Pick a generic American white name, Smith, Jones. Like, those are just what you do. So,
but I feel like something about like the sounds and syllables of Jones, I don't know.
Yeah,
it works better.
Yeah,
which,
I agree.
Like, again, like in a vacuum, you wouldn't necessarily have any reason to think that, but I think it totally works better. But I also thought it was interesting that Lucas apparently first got the idea for the Crystal Skull in 1992. He was shooting that thing with Harrison Ford for the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Okay.
And he was like, oh, we could totally make like a 50s style B movie with like aliens. It would be great. And Harrison Ford was like not into the idea.
No thanks.
And apparently neither was Spielberg. But with enough time, they were both like, this would be a good idea. We could get on board with this. And so the Crystal Skull was born, which apparently also in my research, I discovered crystal skulls are a real thing.
Yeah.
Like they talk about the like, what is it, like the Mitchell Hodges skull or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah.
Don't know how they're made or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like very surprised, and my sense of reality like shifted a little bit when I found out that niche fact.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, so tell me. So your your initial anything about Indiana Jones was Minnesota Cucumber, which is a VeggieTales episode. Mm-hmm. Did you know that it was spoofing Indiana Jones?
I did.
Okay.
I feel like maybe the first time I watched it, I wasn't totally aware, but like eventually, I definitely was like, "Oh yeah, this is about Indiana Jones."
It's funny because so I watched the Indiana Jones movies with my son, and then over the weekend we watched this one, and they do a lot of really specific Indiana Jones shots. Mm-hmm. Like it is they take care to do. It was made by Indiana Jones fans, I guess is what I'm saying. Here's the thing that I need to talk to you about.
Okay. I'm ready.
They're on a quest for Noah's Ark, to find Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
When they're in the museum and they're looking at pictures of the Ark, Noah and his family are just human people, not vegetables. And I don't understand, because all the other Bible stories and Veggie Tales are like vegetable people, but these are just human people. So now I feel like
really funny.
The Minnesota Cucumber episode implies some sort of post-apocalyptic world where the humans died off and the vegetables took over.
Oh my gosh.
So
I never thought about that or noticed that
it's
at all.
disturbing.
Oh my goodness. That's really funny.
My earliest memories of Indiana Jones are the original Nintendo Temple of Doom game. And I remember it really specifically because my friend Brandon had a Nintendo in his basement, and the Indiana Jones cartridge looked different. It was like made by a different company. And normally they were like, they were square and they were a really specific shape. They were gray. The sticker with the logo was in a really specific place. And this was like a black cartridge, and it was a different shape. We played this all the time, and you were in a lot of it was really based in like when you're down in the mines with Short Round and everything.
Right.
So like the mine cart chases and everything, and like going through different doors and the tunnels and everything was a big part of it. So the music from that is like I could sing you the whole song in my head right now. So that was like I knew that game before I knew anything else. So I probably, because of that, watched Temple of Doom a lot more than I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark or Last Crusade.
Huh. That's kind of an interesting choice.
Yeah, so like Short Round and Indiana Jones together is like the duo that I think of. Like that's like Indiana Jones to me. And of course, Ke Quan also in Goonies. So like two of my childhood favorites.
Right.
Like he was a big part of like
it's all coming together.
The childhood movies that I watched and everything. So all right, so just give it to me straight. How do you feel about the Indiana Jones movies as a whole?
Overall, I liked them.
Uh-huh.
I did have a few issues, mostly about like the women characters.
That's okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, because like sometimes old movies, you're like, all right, well the women characters aren't great, but like I can overlook that. And sometimes you're like, man, this is really hard to overlook. And I feel like some of them more than others, it was like, this is kind of hard to mostly the Temple of Doom, I would say, was the worst one.
Yes.
I was like, what? Why is this woman even here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm never one to be like, let's have less women characters in this movie. But I'm like, man, if you're going to do it like this.
I know.
So,
and I think the writing just really fails her in that movie, Kate Capshaw. It's just, because she never... It's not the kind of thing where, like, because she starts off in the Showgirl. It's a great opening scene in Temple of Doom, I feel like. And then she gets pulled along in this adventure. And you think, like, some skill that she has is going to come into play at some point, and it just never does.
Well, and there's, like, even moments where they're, like, trying to, like, climb something or do something, like, vaguely that involves, like, some amount of dexterity.
Yeah.
And I'm like... She's like a showgirl.
Yeah.
I feel like she should be able to do this at the very least.
Yeah.
But, and she's also just like wearing heels for most of the movie, which is really unfortunate. It made me like viscerally uncomfortable. And I'm like, I understand that like if you're in this situation and you just like leave this place while you're wearing your like fancy, stage outfit, you don't have much choice. But I was like, oh, she's riding an elephant and she's wearing high heels. No.
They really don't give her anything. That is unfortunate because that's a pretty common criticism of that movie. Mostly it's that she's annoying or that she just screams all the time.
Right.
Which is... but I really feel like it comes down to the writing. It's just not there for her. They just don't... And there, like you said, there are opportunities where it seems like you could make it work for her.
Right.
It
just doesn't happen. So, and I feel like there's some moments where it is kind of funny, like when Short Round and Indiana are like playing the card game and she's just like running around in the jungle finding every possible like weird or spooky animal that she could and just like freaking out and they're just like totally not paying any attention.
Yeah.
Like that is pretty funny. But I was like, I don't know if that one scene is worth the rest of it.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, overall I enjoyed them. I do feel like the like style of the filmmaking just felt a little like dated to me. And so like some of the Crystal Skull I like almost enjoyed more, even though the end was kind of like pretty weird.
Also a pretty common criticism.
Pretty weird. But so much of it I was like, oh yeah, this just feels like it's a little updated in like its shots and like I mean also its portrayal of women characters by and large. And so I feel like the overall experience is mostly that I just really wanted to rewatch The Librarian's Quest for the Spear afterwards.
Oh, that's tough to hear. Oh, I need to sit down.
Well, because like I know The Librarian's Quest for the Spear is not exactly a good movie.
Yeah.
But it has those similar vibes, and it's just like a real childhood association for me. So,
all right, I'll accept that, and I will choose to not make fun of you for saying The Librarian's Quest for the Sphere is better than Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I didn't say it was better.
That's true, but that was the implication on the table. But I got in trouble for comparing 90210 and Jane Austen. So
that's true.
So we have to
be careful what we say.
We have to allow for this. Let's kind of break it down movie by movie. So let's start with Raiders of the Lost Ark. I feel like for the most part, Raiders of the Lost Ark typically is the one that people consider to be the best. How do you feel about that?
I feel like I think it was pretty good, but I would say I would rate The Last Crusade higher.
Okay. Also, yeah, I feel like in my own like watching of these, it's often gone back and forth between the two of those.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just depending on the kind of movie that you like, because Last Crusade it's much more hijinky and fun. It's a different kind of adventure,
right?
Because Lucas in particular was so inspired by like classic like 1920s and 30s adventure serials, and I think you really feel that in both the original Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. It feels like that. Tune in next week when Indiana Jones finds the and that's not so much true in Last Crusade and definitely not Crystal Skull. But I think in Raiders and Temple of Doom, you do have that sort of adventure of the week kind of feel to the breakdown of the movies.
Well, especially because they like both start with like he's doing something else. He's like wrapping up another adventure,
exactly.
And then he gets into the main adventure.
Yes, I think Raiders starts strong with him and Alfred Molina like going through the in the classic like the ball, him running from the ball and everything. Like it's just so iconic. Lots of little Star Wars references. I don't know if you caught any of the Star Wars references in these movies.
I feel like there was multiple instances of the like, I've got a bad feeling about this. And I was like, wait a second.
Yes.
That's not the right franchise.
Well, there's the plane that he takes off is called like it's like the call numbers are like the R2-3PO or something like that.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's funny though.
The club that Willie is singing in Temple of Doom is called Club Obi-Wan and things like that. There's just like quirky little things.
That's funny.
But Raiders, I feel like the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Karen Allen as Marion is just so good. Like when she shows up, I just love her, and I love their chemistry together. I love the dynamic between those two characters. How do you feel about Marion as a character?
I like Marion as a character. I feel like her entrance scene where they're like doing their like shots competition and she's like pretending to like be failing and then just totally win. I feel like that's really cool. And overall, I feel like the concept of her as a character is really cool. I feel like later in the movie, she like a little bit fell into some of the more like useless damsel kind of tropes, which I think just makes sense for the kind of movie it was. And I was like, well, that's a little too bad. But I feel like her as a character, I like, and I guess it's just to say that I feel like she could have been a little better served like later on in that movie. I also do love the scene. It's like the whole like chase scene with the baskets and everything.
Yes.
I thought was really great. And I also thought the outfit she's wearing with the like red pants is so fantastic.
I feel like you have that outfit.
I wish I had that outfit. See, that outfit is exactly the kind I would have. So one of these days, I'll just come in casually cosplaying as Marion.
Yeah. Okay. I like Sala. I think he's a fun character. John Rhys Davies, his guide there. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I think so. That one was hard because I feel like there were enough like just like dude kind of characters who like looked a little similar and weren't always given a ton of introduction.
Yes.
That I was like, wait, is it that guy? No, okay, it's that guy.
Sala is in both is Raiders and Last Crusade.
Okay.
He has the fez. And,
okay.
So I like him quite a bit. I don't know. I just think that whole first movie works. And I think, there's a lot of criticism of you see too much at the end of Crystal Skull. I mean, that seems to be, at the time, it was just like, just cut it like 30 seconds before and you'd be fine.
Yeah.
But then you watch the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark and you see a lot there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like maybe that would be better if it was just a close-up on their faces or something and their reactions maybe would be a little bit better served than like the weird like demon angels coming and like melting Nazis. Like maybe that would be better. I don't know. Oh my gosh.
The melting Nazis, I was like, what am I looking at right now?
I don't know. But I just think Harrison Ford just sells it. I think he's so good in the movies.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, he definitely has the right vibe. I think it's hilarious though that like every movie he's like, well, I don't really believe in this stuff. It's like, my man, you've seen the Ark of the Covenant melt Nazis. Like, what are you talking about?
Do you know? There's a very famous story about the leading up to the basket scene where he comes face to face with a guy with a scimitar who does the whole like whip, and then he just pulls out the pistol and shoots him. Do you know the story behind this at all?
Is it because he was sick?
Yes.
Okay.
There was an elaborate fight scene choreographed, and they all got like dysentery, and they were all just like in the bathroom all the time.
That's horrible.
And so they were supposed to do this big scene, and Harrison Ford was just like, "Fellas, I can't
not
do
happening.
it." And so he was kind of like, "What? I have a pistol. What if I just?" And so they shot it that way, and so it became,
I think it's great.
It is great.
Like
and
I think it's better than having the whole elaborate fight.
I think it is too.
Because like the movies aren't hurting for elaborate fight scenes,
Yeah.
and I feel like a funny
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, gotcha is
Yep.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that serves well.
I still feel like on this rewatch, I think Raiders to me is the most satisfying. Like if I had to pick, there can be only one Indiana Jones movie. I think I would go with Raiders because I just feel like the characters are the strongest in it. I just feel like as a package, it's the most complete. That hasn't really changed for me. I do maybe feel like Last Crusade is in a lot of ways more enjoyable overall, but there's just something about like the movie making of number one that really just like speaks to me, as I feel like it's just the most iconic. But so you felt pretty okay with number one overall.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Okay. Temple of Doom we kind of covered a little bit. I really like Short Round.
Round is great.
I've always liked him. I really like the relationship between him and Indy. I think is cool.
I think Caleb and I were talking about this, that like if Willie wasn't there and the whole movie was just focusing on Indiana and Short Round, it would be better.
I think it would. I think it would too. I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's like, I don't like to say that, but I do think it is true.
The opening scene in the club where Willie is singing "Anything Goes" in Mandarin, which is funny, and you have the whole like the poison, and you have the center cart that's spinning, and then the diamond and the chaos, and they're running through, and he's like slowly being poisoned. That's one of my favorite movie scenes, like period. I think the pacing of it, I think the choreography of, the ice bucket being tipped and people running for different things. I just think
all the moving pieces are really good.
Yeah. Yeah. He cuts the gong and is like running behind it. It's very James Bond. Like it feels like that, but I just have no notes on that opening scene. I really don't. Like them falling out on, breaking through the overhangs and landing in the car and Short Round, like hold on to your potatoes, like driving off. No notes. I love it. I think that opening scene is like choice. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult with Willie.
Yeah.
Well,
in some ways, I feel like the overall like adventure of the Temple of Doom, I wasn't as like into as the others.
Yeah.
And part of me kind of wishes that like rather than making the Temple of Doom, they just made the movie that like led up to that opening scene.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been fun. Like I don't know what story that would have been, but I feel like it would have been fun.
Yeah.
Because then like on the other side of the movie, you have like the whole like complicated like fight scene in the mines, some of which is really fun, but there's like the bit where it's like Willie's in the like contraption going down over the lava, but then she stops and she gets wheeled back up, but then she gets wheeled back down and she gets wheeled back up, and she's just like screaming the whole time, and I was just like, good grief. I felt like that.
All that steam, though, her pores would be amazing. You know what I mean? Just like completely open,
But I feel like you'd be thinking about other things.
Probably.
You wouldn't be like, this is great for my pores.
You're probably right. But I mean, the after effects, you can't argue with.
That's true.
I think it's interesting in that movie because it almost feels like the gimmick is reversed. Just because, just like you're saying, the opening salvo with the scene with him and Lao She feels like that should have been the main plot, and the Temple of Doom should have been the little we get with Alfred Molina. And so it's like you've kind of flipped the paradigm, and maybe they did that intentionally. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. But when you think about the original trilogy, you have the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, and then like these 3 stones from this one tiny village.
It is a really interesting
choice. The scope
choice.
of it is so low, in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting talking about, again, like the Crystal Skull in the end. The fact that I feel like maybe, because like the first 3 movies, it's all like, well, there's something weird and supernatural happening, but it's like religious in themes, like either the stones or the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail. And I wonder if the fact that the end of the Crystal Skull is like, woo, but it's vaguely science fiction-y. I feel like maybe that's what just didn't sit as well with people.
Yeah. It could be.
Or it could just be the timing of like when it came out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like really it's not that different from
No,
I
it's
feel like
not.
the way the other ones
It's
end.
not. I know. It's really not. I just think, there's a lot of reasons why I feel like that it's just a little bit of a head scratcher, but
I think it's just a little too hard to suspend disbelief with
Yeah.
that one. You get to the point and you're like, okay, all right.
overall, I think I can understand, like, the darker tone of Temple of Doom and everything. I understand why, like, it's usually not. It tends to be people's least favorite of the trilogy, like the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. I think there's also, there's a little bit of, like, watching it now feels a little white saviory of, like, we need
Right.
Indiana Jones to come in and, like, rescue, like, this village,
Right.
and then go on about his day. So there's that, and
I love the crocodiles though that are just like so delighted every
Just, like,
time someone
rolling
falls into
around,
the river.
just,
They're
like,
like, yes,
living their best life.
lunchtime.
Yeah,
And I'm
true.
like, this isn't the reaction that I'm supposed to be having, but like I'm just so excited for those
I
crocodiles.
know. Yeah, they're having a great time. They're having a great time. The scene on the end of the bridge, is really fun. The rope bridge where they kind of pen him in, and then he's just like, "All right, I'm just going to take this bridge out."
Yep.
Pretty good. Pretty iconic.
Yep.
I
He's like
that.
short round, just grab onto the bridge.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Some of the effects, that was the thing my son kept talking about, like how fake it looked, and it's pretty rough in times,
Yeah.
like when they're falling or when they escape the mine and the water like is bursting out, and because it looks rough in places, like it shows its age here and there, but
There's one scene. Overall, I feel like the effects. I'm like, well, they weren't great, but like I didn't feel like my immersion was broken. But there's like one scene where a minecart like goes flying off the rails.
Yeah.
And it's just like all of a sudden this like weird floating minecart. And I was like, oh, okay, all
I
right.
know. Well, I think it's like anything practical looks good. Anything that they tried to use, whatever.
Oh, right.
Whatever like pre-CGI they had is like,
I'm like, oh boy.
Suddenly it's like claymation. I don't know. It's not great. So then that brings us to Last Crusade.
Yes.
We've made a terrible mistake of talking briefly about this off mic because I said to you that I think it's one of the things that I like about it is Sean Connery playing off type as Indiana Jones, like befuddled, like goofy dad.
Right.
And you said you didn't realize it was Sean Connery because you don't really know who Sean Connery is.
Right. I know the name Sean Connery.
who that is,
And I'm
yeah.
familiar with the concept of Sean Connery.
Yes.
But I don't know that I've actually seen
Right.
Sean Connery in
So
anything
I
else.
tried to explain that he was, James Bond and like a famously gruff and tough James Bond who up until that point had pretty much, you'd only seen him in like the cool, sexy, like tough, like very macho kind of roles. And here he is like bald and old and wearing tweed and has a little hat and carries an umbrella. So it's like him playing off type is funny. And then I was trying to give you like a more modern parallel, and I was like, well, what about like a Vin Diesel? And you said
I don't know who that is.
you don't know who that is, and so it's not helpful in any way. So I can't give you a comparison, but just trust that at the time it would have been kind of funny to see an actor like that.
I do believe it.
play
Even
that
if I
kind of
can't
role.
fully experience that for myself.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
understand the concept.
Yes. So The Last Crusade, I believe, is the most quotable movie, and like we quote this movie all the time. My wife and I and friends, like we just quote it all the time because it's so funny. And it really is. The tone I think is quite different from, well, I think each one of them kind of has a different tone.
Yeah.
And I think that works for it. This is definitely the funniest. And I don't think that's to its detriment. I think it's good.
Right.
I think it's kind of nice to have that change of pace. One thing that kind of struck me in the rewatch was I feel like Raiders and Temple of Doom do have that old serial vibe. Like they kind of fit together in that way. What surprised me a little bit watching them the way I did this time was I feel like Last Crusade and Crystal Skull have a lot more in common than I thought.
That's fair.
I think some of the humor, and I think you have the father-son story
Right,
going
yeah,
for
exactly.
you. That I think those two movies sit pretty nicely as companion pieces in a way that I didn't expect. This is probably going to tick people off, but I not that I think that they're equally good, because I think that Last Crusade is infinitely better than Crystal Skull, but I just feel like they really work well together as a 1-2. When you see
Absolutely.
like the
I totally
generational shift
agree.
there, I think is really good. What did you think of Elsa? Speaking of female characters,
Elsa Schneider.
Yeah,
I liked her.
yeah.
Yeah, I felt like she got to be like consistently the most competent women of like
Yeah.
the original 3 movies.
Yeah.
And then it was revealed that she was evil. Spoilers.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought she was a really fun character. I kind of wish that The Last Crusade had also had Marion in it.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have really just kind of brought it above and beyond. But it makes sense that it would have been hard for them to like have her and Dr. Schneider both.
Yeah.
But I thought she was a really fun and interesting character.
Yeah. You just don't see at least I didn't see the turn coming, like at the time. And when I watched it with my son, he didn't suspect that she was evil.
Right.
And I think they're sort of playing on that a little bit. I think they're sort of playing on the trope of her being kind of like, they come and they're like, we're looking for Dr. Schneider, a woman.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then she's kind of playing the damsel. Like, you think something happened to her when the hotels are trashed.
Right.
And then when it's revealed she trashed the hotels, you know, and she's a villain. Like, it's a whole... Like, I think they really turn that on its head. And then when it kind of comes around again that he's kind of helping her, they're helping each other, there's a lot going there. So I think that she's a really competent and pretty successful character overall. I think the opening sequence with River Phoenix as young Indiana Jones is very cool.
I thought that was a lot of fun.
Like the reveal when you think you're seeing Indiana Jones and it's this other dude.
Yes,
is very
I thought
cool,
that was funny.
And I like that they incorporate Harrison Ford's scar.
Oh, I don't think I noticed that.
Oh, yeah. Well, when River Phoenix is running across the train and he falls into the lion enclosure and he gets the whip and he's trying to like hold them back, he whips and it catches him in the face and he gets a cut on his chin, which is the scar that Harrison Ford has. So they kind
That's
of
clever.
Just like, I thought
I like
it was.
that.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that he grabs the whip and it's like this like kind of like dawning Indiana Jones moment.
Yes.
But then he just like totally fails to use it correctly and I was like, ha.
Yeah. But I think that's what the movies do so well, because it's like, they're action movies and there's like tons of action, but Indiana Jones is always kind of like, oh crap, I have to do this. Ah! You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like flawless action. He's always just kind of like making it up, and he's always like slamming into things and like
he just survives by the sheer force of his main character energy.
I mean, he's like grabbing, it's like the literally like the skin of his fingers. He's like holding on to things. So I really like that a lot. I like seeing the background with his dad. I like that the Grail is something that like his dad was obsessed with, and he's like very reluctantly pulled into that.
Yeah, I think the whole dynamic with him and his dad is just like really fun.
Yeah.
Like the moment like early on when the guy is talking to him and it's like, oh, our head researcher on the Grail was kidnapped or whatever. And he's like, well, you should ask my dad. And they're like, well, we already did. Oh, I thought that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And just like all the times when like Indiana Jones is like trying to get them out of some trap or something. And his dad is just like, what's happening? What are you doing? Like, I think that's really fun too.
It is. It's so fun. It's so fun. I mean, when they show up and they find him for the first time and they're trying to get the Grail diary and Sean Connery's like, he wouldn't bring it back here. I mailed it to the States. He's like, you didn't. Junior, you didn't. That's so funny.
Like,
I may have. The chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery is just like off the charts.
It's really great.
It's so good. It's so good. And I think that makes for comedy, and it makes for... They have some really good father-son moments too. Like when they talk about the mother dying, and when they're on the blimp or whatever, and it's like, well, here I am. What do you want to talk about? And Harrison Ford's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, then stop complaining. Let's look at the Grail. It's just really good moments. One of my favorite parts is when they roll up on that castle and they switch clothes, and Harrison Ford pretends to be like, a Scottish lord coming to look at the tapestries. Oh my gosh. It's so funny. Yeah, I don't really have complaints about that movie. I mean, it's watching it this time, it was like quippier and funnier than I remembered it, and I was kind of like, is this good? Do I like this? But I do.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
When we get Sallah back also.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I feel like that's the only time we get a callback of like one of his pals coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, we get Marcus Brody shows up in this again.
Right. That's one thing that overall I wish there was like a little bit more consistency of characters. Like, I understand why there's not, because it's like the whole thing centers around him. It makes sense. But I feel like it'd be a little easier to follow, and I feel like seeing those callback characters would just like...
Yeah.
It's like exciting when that happens.
Well, I think Temple of Doom is just the one that throws it off, because you don't have any... correlation, But you have the college in both 1 and 3. You have Marcus in 1 and 3. You have Sallah in 1 and 3. The thing that cracks me when Marcus comes with him, and Marcus has the Grail, the missing pages from the Grail diary,
Right.
and Indy gives this whole tear about how like Marcus is a ghost. He speaks 20 languages. He
Right.
knows to put someone
It's
in
like
every
he's had
town.
24 hours head start. That's all he needs.
Yeah, and then it cuts to him being like, "Does anyone speak English or ancient Greek?" I know it. It's
so funny.
It's a hard cut that just like kills me every time. I love it. I enjoy Crystal Skull, but I feel like Last Crusade is a really nice ending. You know, because
it does
you
work
see
well. Yeah.
see some family. I feel like you miss out on not seeing Marion, not seeing any like.
Yeah.
I think that is missing, and you know, so I think there's something to be said for going back for that. But having them kind of ride off into the sunset, and it's like another adventure, is good. Like I was satisfied with the trilogy, but there's more.
There's more.
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
It sounds so dramatic.
I know it does.
Like they all sound pretty dramatic, but I feel like that one is a little extra dramatic.
It's big. It is. It's big. It's big. I remember this one coming out when they're saying they're going to make a new Indiana Jones, and I feel like the response was pretty universal. Like, I don't think they should. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think they should. And I don't really remember how I felt about it. I think I was skeptical, you know, and
but hopeful, perhaps.
but hopeful. Sure, certainly hopeful. Yeah, but I think. Like I said, I was pretty satisfied with Last Crusade, so I don't think it was like we're going to go and right this great injustice, you know, and finally have a proper Indiana Jones end. So I didn't really feel like it was something was missing, and now we were finally going to do that. But, you know, I love Indiana Jones, so I was like, okay, you know.
I feel like that's always the situation when it's like there clearly doesn't need to be a sequel,
Yes.
but they decide to make a sequel.
Yes.
That's usually when they can be really not good.
Yeah.
And so it's always the moment of like, well, yeah, of course I want there to be more of this thing.
Yeah.
But is it a good idea? Yeah, I don't know.
And this was pretty close on the heels of the Star Wars prequels, which my feelings on them has softened over the years. At the time, because I want to say Revenge of the Sith was maybe 2005, somewhere around there. So we were right in the wheelhouse of George Lucas going back and like ruining beloved franchises.
Oh man.
So I didn't feel super strong about this being a good idea. And when this starts and you have like the CGI like groundhogs or whatever they were like popping up out of the ground, I was like, oh no.
I thought those were kind of funny.
Did you? Yeah.
But
well,
I mean, but
you
I
know.
also watched this, you know, in 2023.
Sure. I was nervous about it. You know, I was pretty okay with it then. I really didn't like the ending. I remember seeing it twice in theaters. I'm pretty sure I saw it at Charcoal Corral, the drive-in theater, which is a good place to see it. And I saw it a second time in theaters. And I've probably watched it maybe twice since then, including just recently with my
Okay.
son. And he liked it a lot. I think maybe it was my son's favorite of the four of them. And it does feel... It feels suitably updated in filming styles.
Which I
and
thought was
things,
really
you know.
nice.
And I think having him sort of be kind of a spy, he's like vaguely a spy
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, like I thought that
I
was,
also thought
okay.
that scene where he like goes to that random like fake testing village
yeah.
and there's all the like fake people doing
Yeah.
things and he gets in the fridge. I thought that was just like fun.
Yeah,
and
it
funny.
was. It was. That also takes a lot of heat for him, like surviving the nuclear blast by getting kicked around in a fridge. But
But I mean, like,
you
it's
know,
Indiana Jones.
it is. It's true. You can't take it too seriously. I still feel pretty okay about this one. I think there's a lot of really fun sequences. I feel you're like falling asleep over there.
It's the weather change. I never
I
sleep
know.
enough, so then all day I'm just like,
This is not an indictment on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the
No.
Crystal Skull.
I was gonna say I'm like a bat, but it's not like I'm more awake during the night.
You guys still making homemade bagels over at the Fesmeyer
Yes.
home? Okay.
I don't usually make them though. Caleb
He
just
does.
like
He makes the bagels.
I'll come home
Okay.
and he'll just be like making bagels, and I'm like, this is perfect.
I have never been provided a homemade bagel.
We can make this happen
Okay.
at some point.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's
Do you
good.
have like a flavor preference, like plain or some kind?
I do
of
like
bagel?
plain bagels. I mean, you keep saying cheese bagel, and that sounds pretty good to me
Okay.
also. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Crystal Skulls. There's really fun sequences in this. The whole like when they're on the little drivable boat situation, and they're like
Yes.
swinging through the trees with the monkeys and stuff.
And
Kinda
you just know
stupid,
that there's
but I
going to
like
be
it.
water because it's a drivable
Yeah, of course
boat.
you know there's going to be water. Yeah, you do. You do. How did you feel about Crystal Skull overall?
Overall, I liked it. The
Yeah.
end, I was a little bit like, all right.
Shia LaBeouf is a little like community theater greaser vibe. You know, when he like rolls in on the motorcycle, it is so like exactly like Marlon Brando, like on a motorcycle from like any 1950s movie starring Marlon Brando. It feels a little on the nose to me, the way he does it, but I think he sells it pretty well overall. I think he's got decent chemistry with Harrison Ford. I think the role reversal going from Last Crusade to Crystal Skull is pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I thought that was nice too. I thought that Mutt was fine, but I also don't think I've ever seen a Marlon Brando movie. Okay. So it's like if you don't have the original to be like, all right, then you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this reference is a trope that I'm vaguely aware of.
When they're in the restaurant and they're leaving, and he's like, hit this guy, hit Joe College here, and then they get into like the greaser versus college kids fight, and then they're on like the motorcycle chase through the college,
through the library, and everything.
Yeah, and the kid is like Dr. Jones and asks him a question, like fun.
It was fun.
It's a fun moment. I like the stuff with Marion is coming, or maybe you didn't. Did you not know we were going to see Marion here?
I knew she would be back for this one.
Okay. When you finally do see Marion, I think Harrison Ford's reaction to her is great. When she comes out and he's like, like it's so cute. You know what I mean? Like yes. It's just, also, he's so happy to see her.
Speaking of Marion having great outfits, her outfit in this was incredible.
That's true.
Because I feel like it really had the like, I'm exploring in the jungle and I'm an archaeologist vibe.
Yeah.
Which is just so satisfying, I feel like, for her character to get to have that. And she just looks so like grown up and elegant.
She
and
does.
I was like, oh, this
looks very cool.
Amazing.
I think Marion comes across really cool in this. And there's a lot of cool moments where Mutt kind of gets to see her in a new light.
Right.
You know?
And he's like, oh my gosh.
He's like, wait, are you cool? What's happening? What's happening here? And I like hearing, like, we get a little fleshed out with their relationship. We hear that they almost got married, and Indy's like, this was never going to work, and all of this stuff. And he says, like, she was like, well, you certainly moved on. And he says, you know, there was a lot of women, but they all had problems. And he's like, none of them were you, honey. And she has this big smile on her face. Such a good moment.
Like, what is happening?
I know. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I do. I like Crystal Skull. I really do.
It's a good time.
It's
a good time.
I like it. I think as much as it was maybe not necessary in the grand scheme of things, like you could have just had the three. I think seeing him reunited with Marion, seeing them have a little bit of a family, it's a nice, it works as like an epilogue.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Agree.
Like here are the young adventures. Let's check in with this guy that we like.
Yeah, exactly.
And here he's kind of reconnected with like, you know, the love of his life, and they've got this son, and he's, you know, just going to go and like do puzzles or fly fish or whatever. You know what I mean?
Or find the Dial of Destiny.
But maybe in 15 years he'll find a Dial of Destiny. I don't know. Who's to say?
Who's to say?
I don't know. We had some Elvis music. So did you recognize it now that you've tried Elvis?
Yes. Well, Hound Dog was there, and we know that Hound Dog is like the one that I definitely can recognize. So I was like, oh yeah.
It all came together.
I thought the Crystal Skulls looked horrible, and I understood as the plot progressed why they looked like that, but like at the beginning when they like get out the skull, I'm like, that looks why couldn't they just make it like human skull shaped? And then I was like, oh okay, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. But that part was not my favorite.
Cate Blanchett as the bad guy. How'd you feel about it?
I didn't realize it was Cate Blanchett until later.
Oh, before this moment though, you learned.
No, before this moment.
Okay.
I think it was when the credits rolled. That's when I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah,
I thought she was fun. I thought she was fun too. Interesting character.
The scene where he first, like, they throw him out of the car and the hat rolls down and he picks it up and you see the silhouette.
It's a fun reveal.
And you get the little throwback to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you see the Ark in the big lab. Did you see it? Yeah, it was fun. When he's, like, running across the beams in the warehouse and, like, swinging from lights and everything. I thought it was all the action I thought was really fun in this movie.
I thought so too.
You know, and I know like I have friends, you know, like contemporaries of mine who just like Crystal Skull is apocrypha to them. Like it's the classic three and that's
it's not canon.
But exactly. But I don't feel that way. Like I will count Crystal Skull like in my Indiana Jones canon. You know what I mean?
I thought Crystal Skull was fine, and I enjoyed it, but I also, it's not like I grew up watching Indiana Jones and then this was like a weird add-on. Yeah. I feel like the experience of like watching them all at the same time and not like having like this long-standing idea of Indiana Jones probably served me well in that regard. So,
but even though they all kind of take different directions tonally, I think as a whole, there's nothing that really sets Crystal Skull apart as like, this is the different one, other than their ages.
Right.
I don't think there's anything that really tells you like this is the odd one. You know, I think it kind of fits in maybe even a little better than Temple of Doom, honestly.
I think so. Yeah.
You know, I guess let's discuss the alien in the room. When we get to it in the end, I don't know. I don't think that it's more
weird.
I don't think that it's more weird than the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I think maybe, because I agree. I don't think it's more weird than the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, or really even than the end of
Last Crusade?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think maybe, I don't know if it's just that like the other ones you kind of accept that like they came out a long time ago, and so like the melting effects are kind of weird and everything, and you're just like, all right, cool, we're just rolling with it. So I don't know if when it came out served it poorly, or if the fact that it's like supposed to be aliens isn't somehow... It seems like it's trying to tell you that it's more realistic, but it's totally not.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't know if that's an issue.
Seeing like the sort of like little pudgy, like clay looking alien guy is maybe a step too far. I don't know. Because there's also, the concept of the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail maybe hits a little differently than like ancient aliens,
Right.
One is like biblical lore and one is like an A&E TV show. Like it just doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't
has
hit
a different
the same way, and maybe that's just because like we're old church kids. Like maybe that's why that feels. But like the stakes don't feel quite as high, and I don't know. Seeing a flying saucer take off in the end, just
I feel like had the clay alien not been shown,
yes,
and had the saucer not been there, it probably would have been fine. Like, I feel like the moment where, like, all the skeletons, like, morph together into the clay alien, I was like, And the moment where you, like, actively see the saucer, I was like, But other than that, I feel like it wasn't too bad.
Right. Yeah, the skeletons morphing, I think, is kind of an interesting concept. And I don't know if, like, showing the saucer as clearly as you do, maybe seeing some kind of disruption and having something kind of like take off.
Right, but you can't quite tell what.
But that was just like a 1950s flying saucer, which clearly was the intention. Like they wanted to do an Area 51 kind of thing, but it just... I think I can say that I don't believe that works.
I think that's fair. And I think I have more appreciation for it when I like specifically know that they were trying to emulate that kind of like B-movie aliens feel. I'm like, oh, okay. You did.
Yeah.
And so, but I feel like it does, even though it's not weirder, like we said, is really not that much weirder than The Last Crusade or the Ark of the Covenant. It does feel a little different from the kind of weirdness feels a little different somehow. And so I feel like that is maybe what makes it hard to swallow.
I think there's one thing that I think that the Temple and Raiders have going for them is that they are cut from that old movie serial cloth. Mm-hmm. And I think that if Last Crusade and Crystal Skull had really tried to, if they had the spirit of a 50s kind of B movie, if either one of them like had that kind of vibe through and through, I think it may have served them both a little bit more. And they don't really have that. They're just sort of like, we're not really doing that anymore. We're just gonna like be a movie. And I think Last Crusade pulls that off a little bit better than Crystal Skull does, because Crystal Skull ends on a 50s B movie kind of plot point, but the rest of the movie has nothing to do with a 50s sci-fi movie vibe. Yeah. And that's where I think it falls apart.
I think that's probably fair.
It needs that through line for the end to pay off. And I think that they could have gotten there had they done that, but they didn't. So, the wedding is corny, but I think don't you kind of want it to be?
I think so.
Yeah. And the hat flying down in front of Shia LaBeouf and him like picking it up. Mutt Williams is the character's name. I think I've consistently said Shia LaBeouf, but he picks it up and almost puts it on, and then Harrison Ford snatches it away and puts it on.
Which also, this brings up a good point, which I know we talked about this off mic because we just break our own rules.
I know. We got to stop.
But speaking of characters who I didn't realize who they were.
Oh, yeah.
Caleb and I were talking the other night, and he was like, oh, yeah, I don't think they would have been able to get Shia LaBeouf back for the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf.
And I was like, oh, that's who that was. Exact same thing with the Sean Connery situation of like, I know who that is. Sorta.
Yeah, I think there was talk of, on the heels of Crystal Skull, there was a little bit of talk of Shia LaBeouf kind of doing a spin-off.
I feel like that could have been fun.
I don't think it really went. I think people just didn't love Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
I think it was a hit financially, but I think the reviews were pretty mixed, and I don't think there was much of a fervor for let's do a Shia LaBeouf movie. I don't think anybody was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that pretty much killed it. But I think that scene was a little bit of a nod to maybe we will. What do you think?
Well, and I feel like there's kind of the idea that even if there won't necessarily be movies about that happening, that to some degree he will I don't know, carry on some of the Indiana Jones.
I think it was a little bit of Mutt kind of considering sort of accepting his destiny, his Dial of Destiny. I read too that John Rhys-Davies, who played Sala in 1 and 3, was offered a scene as a wedding guest, his best man or something like that, and he was like, "No, my character needs more than that," and wouldn't do it. So I would have liked to have seen him, but he didn't show up.
Alas,
he didn't show up. Yeah. So overall, these movies are good. I like them. I think they're solid. I feel like you're at a 3 out of 5 for the Indiana Jones franchise.
I feel like I have a really hard time quantifying things in numbers.
Okay.
Every time I do a Goodreads review, I just struggle. It's really hard. I feel like I liked them. I feel like some of the execution of the movies, I found the concept a little bit cooler than some of the execution.
Okay.
And I think that's just because of when I was born.
Yeah.
And what I'm used to in terms of filming style.
Yeah. There's probably no point in me telling you that Tom Selleck was going to play Indiana Jones and then he passed on it at the last minute and Harrison Ford got the role. Because you don't know who Tom Selleck is. You don't know who Tom Selleck is. It would have been very different. Let me just say that. Tom Selleck went on to be in Magnum P.I. and things like that. So, you know.
I vaguely know what Magnum P.I. is.
Okay. So you think the execution didn't always land for you?
I think so. And I think that's more of a problem with me than with the actual movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're a problem.
Thank you.
I think we could both agree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed the experience. I am curious about the Young Indiana Jones show, so maybe
you're
going
to like that better, and I just have to be okay with that. I just have to be okay with it.
See what happens. I could even if I like it better, I could pretend to not like it better if that would make you feel
I think
better.
that would be better for the sake of this podcast. I think. Yeah.
Oh, I also do have to say, this is really more of a bookshelf note.
Okay.
But I did, in the interim, crochet a hippo and an alligator, and I do have a picture of both of them watching the Crystal Skull.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We need to put that on the Tumblr, maybe.
We can drop it on the Tumblr.
Toss it on Twitter. Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at DA Howe Library, Facebook at David A. Howe Public Library, and Tumblr over on But Have You Tried?
To see the hippo and the alligator.
That's right. Okay. Well, in 2 weeks, we're going to be back for our bookshelf talking about the things we've been watching and reading. One of the things we will have watched is Dial of Destiny. So you got to come back, and we'll start with an extended segment where we talk all things Dial of Destiny, see how it comes back around. I got to say, Crystal Skull is a pretty good end cap for the series. So
yeah, I am very curious to see how Dial of Destiny goes.
Yeah.
I am optimistic.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I watched the trailer, and I was like, this looks pretty fun.
All right. You're into it.
Yeah.
You're into it.
We'll see how it goes.
All right.
So if you want to watch any of the older Indiana Jones movies, we have them all here at the library. And while you're here, if you haven't signed up for the summer reading program, you can.
That's
because it's happening right now.
The magic's
happening.
happening.
And it's incredible. It's the most exciting time of the year.
It is.
You thought that Most Wonderful Time of the Year song was about Christmas? It's about summer reading program.
You were wrong. All together now. That's our theme.
That's our theme.
And it's libraries across the country are doing this All Together Now theme. So if you're not local, you can go and find your local library and see what they're doing for their All Together Now.
All Together Now there.
You know, our library also has a Discord, and we've been talking about having a But Have You Tried section on the library Discord where we're going to do some little talky things. So if you want to tell Allie that she's wrong about Indiana Jones, or you want to tell me that I'm wrong about Jane Austen or miso soup or whatever, then you can come join our library Discord. Just send us a note on one of the socials there, and we'll get you connected.
Absolutely.
All right.
So, coming up next.
Yes.
What you have in response to Indiana Jones.
Yes.
I feel like this is actually a segue that kind of makes sense for us.
Okay.
So I know you really like Indiana Jones. It's got a little bit that action-adventure thing.
Yes.
Sometimes the spy vibes.
Yes.
You know. But have you tried Spy Family?
Spy Family.
Spy Family.
I have never heard those two words put together.
Okay.
I know Spy Kids.
Okay. All right. That is kind of a Spy Family, really.
All right. What is Spy Family?
Spy Family. It's spelled Spy X Family, but it's pronounced Spy Family.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay. All right.
But what it is, it's a manga series. It's about a spy.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And for a mission, he needs to have a daughter to infiltrate this school.
Okay.
So he adopts this little girl, but she can read people's minds.
Ooh.
But he realizes he also needs to have a wife to like sell the whole act.
Okay.
And so the little mind-reading girl
I'm into this.
sets him up with an assassin.
Okay.
The only one who knows who everyone is the mind-reading little girl. And it is so fun.
Are they really going to fall in love?
Probably.
Okay.
So, yes. So we have the manga series in the collection.
Okay.
You can also read it online, but it might be like on a sketchy website. I warn you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And there is also maybe like one season of the anime out.
Okay.
On like Crunchyroll and places like that.
Okay.
So.
All right. How many? Is it is it concluded? The manga?
It's running.
Oh, it's ongoing.
Currently running.
Okay. So how many should I read?
I think there's maybe like 7 or so out.
Okay.
And they're quick reads, so you can probably read them all.
I
but
can do
if
it.
you if you don't want to or don't have time,
Yeah.
I think a sampling will.
I mean, I just made you watch, 10 hours of Indiana Jones, 10 hours plus, so I can read 7 mangas, definitely.
So, and if you want to check out 1 or 2 of the episodes, you can, but like, I'm not going to be like, you must.
Okay.
I will
right.
probably watch some more of those because I've only seen a few. So to like review.
I'm into this. I was nervous for a minute that you were going to make me watch some VHS of like a children's spy show.
Oh my gosh.
I was worried about that. Just I mean, I would have done it. I would have happily done it. And maybe I'll make you watch Scooby-Doo at some point anyway. So, who am I to judge? But no, I'm excited. This sounds fun.
I think you'll like it. It's a lot of fun.
All right, I'm going to check it out.
All right, so in a month, Spy Family.
That's right.
With an Invisible X.
Okay, Invisible X. All right, I'm going to do it. So if anybody wants to read along, I'll be reading Spy Family. And you've read all of these. You're up to date. Have you seen the whole show?
I haven't seen the whole show.
Okay, so you're
into
that.
I'll do that to refresh.
All right. That sounds good. So 2 weeks, we're going to be talking Dial of Destiny,
Yes.
all the other things we're reading and watching. And in a month, Spy Family with an Invisible X.
With an Invisible X.
Okay, I'll see you then. We've got to go to Cairo and solve a mystery, Dr. Jones.